Now next we'll discuss the role of ozone layer depletion on climate change. So the very first thing that you should note is that it has a negative radiative forcing. And as we have already discussed, the meaning of negative radiative forcing is the fact that it would have a cooling effect, a very moderate but cooling effect on the temperature. So now what happens is there are two things that are in play here. If I consider this to be the earth, and let's say this is the ozone layer and you have holes here. This is, I know this is not a proper description, but yes, let's understand that this is the earth and let's say this is the ozone layer. Now there are two things that happen. First, if there is a hole in the ozone layer, there are more solar radiations that would come to the surface of the earth, right? So more solar radiations coming to the surface of the earth would mean more heat, correct? This would mean more heat. And if this means more heat, it means that it has a positive radiative forcing, meaning that it will warm the temperatures. But at the same time, there is something else that will happen, and that the long wave radiations from the surface of the earth, they would also go back. If you remember, we started our discussion with what is long wave and what is short wave radiation. The fact that long wave radiations are reflected back from the surface of the earth, they would not be trapped by the atmosphere, but instead they would also be able to go back into the space. And this would have a negative radiative forcing, meaning the fact that it would cool the temperatures, right? So now you have two different effects happening at the same time. But what happens is this effect, the negative effect, is actually greater than the positive effect. And since negative effect is greater than the positive effect, the net result would be a negative radiative forcing. So net result being negative radiative forcing, meaning that it would slightly cool the atmosphere and decrease the temperatures. I believe that this point is clear. So if you look at this line, the second effect negates the first and results in modest negative radiative forcing of Earth's surface and a modest cooling of the lower stratosphere by approximately 0.5 degrees Celsius per decade since the 1970s. So this is the effect that we would have of ozone layer depletion. Next, we need to understand the role of oceans in climate change. Now, role of oceans in climate change, again you have to understand that approximately 25 to 30% of the carbon dioxide which is pumped into the lower atmosphere is absorbed by the oceans. Now, the scientists have been able to identify that oceans help in moderating the Earth's average temperature. And that's why, and first of all, what they do is that they remove at least 25 to 30% of carbon dioxide which is given to the lower atmosphere by human activities. So the oceans also absorb the heat from lower atmosphere, and this basically with the use of current slowly is transferred into deep oceans where it is buried with the sediments for several 100 million years. Now the solubility of carbon dioxide water decreases with increasing temperature. So what happens is when the oceans warm up, some of their dissolved carbon dioxide is released into the lower atmosphere. You can take an example of carbon dioxide which bubbles out or fizzles out of a carbonated soft drink which is warm. Same would happen with oceans as well. The carbon dioxide which is absorbed by the oceans, they would also fizzle out into the atmosphere. Now this actually would speed up the projected climate change, or the average temperature of the atmosphere will start to increase because of this problem. Apart from that, there was one study which was conducted back in 2007, and the scientific measurements that were done, they showed that the upper portion of the ocean, they have started warming by 0.3 to 0.7 degrees Celsius during the last century. Now this basically is a very huge increase, because you may think that 0.3 degrees Celsius or 0.7 degrees Celsius increase is not huge. But you also have to understand that there is a huge volume of water that we are talking about. There is a huge volume of water. Now, you go by the concept of physics, you may understand anything that is heated expands and anything that is cooled contracts. So if there is an increase even by 0.3 to 0.7 degrees Celsius in the ocean water, it would mean that this volume of water would expand. And since this volume of water is expanding, it would mean that there is rise in sea level. There will be a rise in sea level. Now, apart from that, there are other studies that were conducted, and they said that with the rise in temperature or with the oceans becoming warmer, the amount of carbon dioxide that they can absorb also starts to weaken. So now they cannot take as much amount of carbon dioxide as they would have been able to if the temperatures have increased. Not only this, there was another study which was done for acidity of oceanic water, and there it was found that with increasing temperatures, the acidity of oceans are also increasing. And it is estimated that this acidity could increase by approximately 30% by 2050. Now, what happens is, with increasing acidity of the oceans, the ability of the oceans to absorb carbon dioxide will even weaken more. So what is happening is, with increasing temperatures, you are accelerating all the things that should not happen. So the ability of carbon dioxide absorption of oceans will anyway decrease with increasing temperatures, and with increasing acidity this will be further weakened. So this is something that we are looking at if we do not take the proper steps with respect to oceans. So just to summarize what we are saying, first of all, what oceans do is, oceans absorb 25 to 30% of carbon dioxide which are released due to human activities. Second point that we discussed, that there has been an increase of approximately 0.3 to 0.7 degrees Celsius in the temperatures of the ocean water as compared to 1900s or early 1900s. And this, as I said, that it would look to be a very meager increase, but since the volume of water is so high, it means that it would lead to a rise in sea level because this water is expanding. Then apart from that, we are saying that acidity of oceans is increasing, and with increase in acidity of oceans, the ability to absorb carbon dioxide decreases. So all these kind of effects will be seen, and because of which the moderating effect that oceans have by absorbing all the carbon dioxide, and with the ocean currents they go down the ocean, but this will not happen anymore, and this ability to absorb carbon dioxide will start to decrease. So this also has to be taken care of, because ultimately what is happening is, the acidity is increasing. And why acidity is increasing? Because concentration of carbon dioxide in the lower atmosphere is increasing. Now not only this, the rainfall also would start to decrease. Why the rainfall would start to decrease? Because all this carbon dioxide is there at the lower level of the atmosphere. So the cloud formation will not happen at the lower level, it will start to go above. And once it starts to go up, this is when you will see that the amount of precipitation also will start to decrease. So all these kind of things would happen if we do not take proper steps, as I said. So just to summarize, what we are saying is that due to human activities, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is increasing, because of which the greenhouse effect on the atmosphere is increasing. That means that ocean temperatures are increasing, atmospheric disturbances are increasing, and this would ultimately lead to destruction of the ecosystem in the oceans or the coastal ecosystem. Not only this, it would also lead to migration of certain species. And one more thing that we discussed, that with increasing atmospheric carbon dioxide, the acidity of the oceans will increase, and with increasing acidity of the ocean, the ability to absorb carbon dioxide will start to decrease. So all these things will start to happen with the oceans. And oceans, as we discussed, play a huge role in moderating the temperature of the entire earth. So this will become another issue in coming future. So these were all the things which can be seen as basic causes or the things that are leading to climate change. Whether we talk about the emission of greenhouse gases, and we discussed all the greenhouse gases, we discussed deforestation, the effect deforestation can have, we discussed ozone layer depletion, we have discussed the effect of oceans or the role of oceans in climate change, and we have also discussed the role of aerosols in climate change. So all these kind of things are affecting climate change in one way or the other. With this we come to the end of the first half of the lectures. Now the next thing that we are going to start with are the possible effects of projected climate change. What kind of effects climate change can have if we do not take proper steps.